Welcome back to Monster Minis. Today I'm going to show you how not to paint an NX-01. I'm sure this will come as a shock to many of you, but I am a huge Star Trek fan. And having recently unlocked the ability to build more and more complex circuits and light things up with LEDs, I felt like the time was right to tackle my first Star Trek model and appropriately light up the engines and nacelles. And what better enterprise to do that with than the NX-01, one of my favorite ships and an underappreciated show, which I do feel has aged well, and I'm happy that people are giving it a second chance. This kit is from Polar Lights. I did not buy the Polar Lights lighting kit. I decided to roll this myself. I do love that the kit came with an optional secondary hull for the fictional NX-01 refit that makes it look more like a Constitution class, but I chose to build it in its original NX-01 style from Enterprise. The kit itself was really straightforward, big parts, not really a whole lot going on, which was nice because I spent most of the time running the wires and building the LED lighting rig. For the red lights in the nacelles, I used 2mm LEDs, and for the blue lights in the nacelles, the impulse engines, and the deflector array, I used 3mm LEDs from Green Stuff World. And I replaced the plastic post with a hollow brass rod so that I could run the wires through. This did become a tangled mess of wires to get everything run down the pylons and then assemble really everything in the saucer section where we had more room to work. LED packs that light up the nacelles ended up being a little too big for the nacelles. As you can see, it doesn't close completely. So a liberal application of green stuff as a gap and seam filler was required to sell this look. The model was primed with Mr. Finishing Surfacer Black, thinned with Mr. Color Thinner 400. The NX-01 has a very metallic look in the show, so to replicate that, I used Ammo's Atom line for their Atom Metallics, starting with steel and metallic black to get the color I was looking for. And once the base coat was down, I highlighted the raised areas with silver, also from the Atom range. And then once the airbrush layer was down, I hit it with a coat of Ammo Glossy Lucky Varnish to seal it in. I've never done any of these authentic surface detailing, and in the Star Trek world they call this Aztecing. So this is a decal sheet that's an aftermarket where you lay these decals down all over the model to represent the surface variation that's present in the actual NX-01 in the show. I've never done this before, but I've wanted to for a long time because I thought this would be the step that would make it really cool. I used Ammo's Decal Set and Decal Fix decal solution. The decal set goes on underneath the decal to give it a little bit better surface to adhere to, and then once it's on, you come back in with the decal fix to soften the decal and let it really melt down into the surface texture of the model. At least that's how it's supposed to work. This ended up being a long and arduous process, and in retrospect, I think I would rather do this with a paintbrush if I was to do it again than to use these decals. They just ended up being so thick, and it got really difficult to make it look like a surface texture and not like a model covered in stickers. And I think what really bothered me about it was just the change in sheen. That every time you looked at it in a different light, it just had a different look than the finished model. It was just too shiny. And at this point, I can honestly say I don't hate it. I actually like the variation. I like how the Aztecing is coming along. It's kind of a pain to apply, but I'm really liking the finished result. I like the variation in the individual panels. It's coming together nicely. This piece, though, that goes on the primary hull here was a bit of a bear to get it to line up correctly. And these raised hatches that are next to the bridge here just proved a little bit too difficult to deal with. So I went ahead and just cut the decal at around that hatch and then removed the excess. and I was feeling pretty good about things right about the time I was putting the registry number on the front of the saucer. This is where it starts to go sideways. I didn't like the sheen of all of the decals on the model. It was just too shiny, the surface wasn't uniform, I wasn't happy with it. So I foolishly thought, oh, well, why don't I just hit it with a coat of ultra matte varnish that will knock down the sheen and will be exactly what I want. And oh boy, was that the wrong idea. When the matte varnish dried, it dried like this. I believe it had gotten under some of the decals. It got into some of the areas where the decals, like it acted differently on areas of the model where the decals weren't. It looks terrible. It looks like it's covered in mildew. So at this point, I decided, okay, well, we now have reverse highlighting going on where the matte varnish has settled into the creases, which should be the darkest areas on the ship, and has dried a milky white, which makes it look stupid. And maybe, it's a water-based varnish. Maybe I can just get a toothbrush and some water and start scrubbing this thing and get this to come off, right? So maybe we can just scrub this off. And that was not successful. So then since varnish was working so well for me, I figured, hey, why not hit it with another top coat? Well, this time we'll use VMS in a matte finish and see if that solves the problem. And spoiler alert, it does not. And here you can see the absolute mess that is the NX-01 at this point. So I thought, okay, well, what if we lean into it a little bit? What if rather than trying to go for a pristine NX-01, I get out my oil brushers from Ammo and we go for a dot filter that tries to hide this blotchy appearance, maybe lean into it a little bit. In retrospect, I don't know why I thought this was going to work. Once again, it doesn't. And it was at this point I stopped filming. But after I put the camera away, I figured maybe there was one other thing we could do to fix it. What if I just got out the metallics and a dry brush? But since the camera was not rolling for that effort, I give you the Starfleet Corps of Engineers dry brushing the NX-01 in an orbital space dock. At the end of the day, the LEDs make this model. The glow of the red from the nacelles onto the back of the saucer, the glow of the blue down the pylons. I absolutely love the LEDs in this model. And I think this model was an important lesson for me to learn, not just in my journey as a modeler, but just in life in general, that maybe that thing that you set out to do, you didn't get it to 100% of what you wanted, but there were some other things that you accomplished that kind of make up for it, that make it something that you do really like. And that, to me, is why I decided to go ahead and put this video out. I think this is a cool model. I really like the lights. It's a part of my daily life. It sits on my desk every day. So I wanted to share it with you and encourage with you to keep building, keep working. It may not have turned out the way that you wanted, but there's probably something redeemable and maybe something you really like in the work that you did. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.